Hello and welcome back, it's good to see you. I got COVID real bad before the Moon Knight finale and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, so I didn't get a chance to review those. Then my family came to visit and that was the first time I had seen them in 2.5 years, so as much fun as it is talking to tens of people on the internet, family comes first. But now we have Ms. Marvel to talk about, and episode 1 was a really strong introduction. So let's dive in. Like I usually do with first episodes, because they're a lot of setup, let me give you a bit of background on Ms. Marvel and then we'll dive into the episode. Kamala Khan is a pretty new character as far as Marvel Comics goes. She was first put to paper in 2013 and getting her first issue in 2014, she very quickly became a fan favourite. She was born in New Jersey to a Pakistani family, and her relationship with her family looks to be an important aspect of this show. She's a superhero super nerd, with her favourite being Captain Marvel. She has two best friends, Bruno and Nakia, who are both going to be recurring characters, and a school bully who later becomes a friend in the comics, Zoe Zimmer. Now Kamala Khan is a very interesting one to talk about in terms of the MCU for two reasons: her origin and her power set. Now I'm about to get pretty into it here because there's a lot to chew on, so buckle up. In the comics, Kamala Khan is an Inhuman. Inhumans are an offshoot of the human race genetically engineered by the Kree, the blue bad guys from Captain Marvel, and each have their own unique powers. An offshoot of the human race with enhanced abilities. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? It could be the X-Men. It could also be the Eternals or the Deviants. Marvel has a lot of these pseudo-human races. This is one of those situations where they're similar enough to be confusing, but they are their own separate thing. The X-Men are just humans with a mutant gene, whereas Inhumans are genetically superior to humans but must have their powers unlocked through Terrigenesis, which involves the use of Terrigen crystals. I know. It's a lot. Now if this sounds familiar to you, you've probably watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because they introduced the concept of Inhumans quite early on in their run. Back in 2014 at the El Capitan Theatre, Marvel Studios announced their Phase 3 lineup, which at the time included an Inhumans movie. Everyone thought this was to rival the X-Men movies, as Marvel Studios didn't yet have the rights to the X-Men. The Inhumans movie was later downgraded to an ABC TV series because apparently Kevin Feige didn't really like the Inhumans as characters and was only agreeing to make the movie to appease Ike Perlmutter, who he famously did not get on with. Hearsay, Your Honour! That's correct. None of this was officially confirmed, so take it all with a grain of salt. Anyway, the Inhuman series bombed so badly that Marvel are just trying to pretend that it doesn't exist. That was until Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Spoilers if you haven't seen it, but it's coming to Disney Plus at the end of the month, so you can catch up then. But the leader of the Inhumans and head of the Inhuman royal family, Blackagar Boltagon, Black Bolt, made an explosive cameo. This cameo was super interesting for people like me because it was basically understood that the Inhumans were not to be talked about. So for the main Inhuman to appear in full costume and for the Inhumans to be recognised as part of the MCU, albeit part of a different reality, was really something, especially after all that backstage. Hearsay! Yes. That. Thank you. Okay, back to Kamala Khan. In the comics, her power is that she is a polymorph, which basically means she can manipulate her body to look however she likes, which usually involves embiggening her limbs so that she can attack her foes, which looks quite similar to Mr. Fantastic's elastic abilities. Say that 3 times fast. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, in the run up to this show, there were a number of rumours suggesting that Marvel Studios might be completely changing her origin and powers to remove the Inhuman aspect, which was received quite negatively. And now we can talk about the show, because we've seen her powers, and yeah, it looks like there's been a bit of a change. But I think this could just be the tip of the iceberg. I'm going to come back to this at the end because I want to talk about the episode and then we'll come back to it when we have all the information. So this might be one of the most solid character introductions the MCU has ever had, I think. It's light on action, but we get a fantastic insight into who Kamala Khan is, her relationship with her family, and her friends. The episode centres around Kamala and Bruno going to AvengerCon, a Comic-Con-like festival based around the Avengers, and Kamala's outfit for the Captain Marvel costume contest, for which she needs one last touch. After a bit of back and forth with her family, who didn't really want her going to AvengerCon, Kamala sneaks out to go anyway, with her one last touch being a bracelet that her grandmother had just sent over. And it turns out, the bracelet has magical powers! In a superhero show. Who'd have thought it? When Kamala puts on the bracelet for the first time, she's wrapped in this purple mist and then she's transported for a half a second to this other realm or reality or something that is full of other figures. I'm sure that'll get explored in a later episode. The bracelet gives her the power to generate hard hard light crystals which she shoots out to the amazement of the audience at AvengerCon. But one crystal accidentally knocks the head off an Ant-Man statue which falls and inexplicably gains an inordinate amount of speed, rampaging through the convention hall and wreaking havoc in its wake. Zoe, who also entered the Captain Marvel costume contest, gets caught up in all of this mess, and Kamala has to make the save using a hand-shaped crystal which comes out of her body looking just like the polymorph power from the comics. She then gets caught by coming home much later than she planned to and gets the disappointed treatment from her mum. We've all been there. I'm really pleasantly surprised by this show. I was expecting it to feel a bit young from the feeling that I got from the trailer, but I really enjoyed the first episode, and I'm really digging the family dynamic aspect, and I'm looking forward to seeing that progress as Kamala learns to adjust to having new powers. One thing I'll say is that this show oozes style and charisma. It actually feels very similar to Shang-Chi in that sense. The whole production feels very cohesive, as if all departments were singing from the same hymn sheet, as it were. Things like Kamala and Bruno's text conversations appearing in the background, or the animated doodles that were coming up on the wall as they were riding their bikes down the street. The whole thing's just really colourful and in your face, but not overwhelming. A stark contrast to Moon Knight, which just finished. So while it looks like they may very well be changing Kamala's powers, I've got a feeling there's more to these bracelets than meets the eye. I think at some point down the line, whether it's the last episode of the season or at some point down the line in the near future, those bracelets are going to break, releasing a Terrigen crystal which will expose Kamala to the Terrigen mists, putting her through Terrigenesis, giving her a more comic accurate origin and powers. Now that is a complete shot in the dark based purely on my own knowledge of the MCU, what I think might be in the future for the MCU, and some fairly questionable guesswork. But we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, that about does it for me. I think I've thrown enough information at you for one day. I do apologise for the sheer overload of information that came at you there, but if some of this stuff ends up being true, you'll be glad I told you. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.